about Islam to non-Muslims. And so each week I was to give a 30-minute talk. And you can see all the topics there. To go with each of these talks, I wrote an article like this. 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 words. And all the Quran references and so are in there. So I'm not going to take your time trying to copy down references and things. If you want them, it's all freely available. You go to the website, you download the article. If you've got half an hour to spend and you like the look of me, then you can listen to the program. But anyway, all the articles are there. And the second thing that's also there is something called a short guide to understanding Islam. And that's it. It is a very short book. It's available to download from the internet in English and in German. It's not available yet in French, but if anybody feels like they want to translate it, if they think it's useful, that would be a wonderful thing. And it's freely available there. Anybody can download it. This printed one, and I've only got 3 copies of these, unfortunately, but I'll leave some with Sadiqa. This is actually produced and paid for by the Islamic Centre of England, which is the Iranian Ithna Shari Centre in London. And they thought that this short guide explained Islam in a way that they found very helpful for non-Muslims, and so they put up the money to have these printed, and they are now giving them away to people. And the same is happening in Dublin. The Ithna Shari community there also has some, and they're giving them away to people. So that is my attempt to try to give people a basic understanding of Islam. The TV programs go into much greater depth. They are much longer. So if you want to find out references, go and look there. Okay, back to hijab. We find the term hijab in the Quran to refer to there is a hijab between heaven and hell that can never be crossed. There is a hijab between this world and the next. In paradise, we're told there is a hijab that will be lifted in the presence of God. Hijab here is meaning barrier, partition. Here's a hijab. It's partition, it's an invisible one, but you all know it's there and you all know why it's there. That's a hijab. Something that divides or partitions. Really important starting point. Because we talk about the greater jihad as my battle with my lower nafs, with my bad instincts, my bad inclinations, my forgetfulness, my anger, my whatever. So this is then called the greater jihad by the Prophet. Now this is very important, because what it's saying is, if you are not undertaking the greater jihad, you are not fit to take part in the lesser jihad. Because your eye is poisoned. Your heart is not in the right place. So when we hear, as we hear at the moment, these groups of ISIL, whatever, Daesh, being called jihadis, we need to explain why this cannot possibly be true, because their hearts are clearly in the wrong place. Because they are doing things that are totally against the Quran, the Prophet, the tradition of Islam. So whatever they are, they cannot be doing it in the name of Islam. Who says so? Fortunately not me, because that would not give you much of an argument. But this is where those 2 references that you wrote down become very important. Because if you do not know them, you should. If you do not know the Imam message, it's been there for 10 years. And it is a statement to say that all acts of indiscriminate killing, all acts of so-called terrorism, all acts of suicide are forbidden in Islam. And it goes on to say a lot of other things besides. Who says it? It was signed by 84 heads of state from around the Muslim world. Princes, presidents, sheikhs, kings, whatever you want to call them. And by the leading religious scholars from each one of those countries. Something like 250 of them for the initial document. Sunni and Shia. This is one of those occasions when you forget that you have some differences and you rejoice in the fact that you have got the vast majority of things in common. Sunni and Shia scholars together, Sunni and Shia communities together, their leaders gathering to make this statement. Now that's about as strong a fatwa as you can get. That's as close to an ijma as you're going to get in the modern times, and much closer than you ever got in ancient times.
Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, my thanks goes out to the organizers for inviting me, allowing me to partake in this phenomenal program. I'm very honored to have this opportunity to add something small in some way. And also to you for taking the time out to partake and engage with us. My talk today is an introduction for tomorrow. Tomorrow's discourse is trying to understand the prophetic model of establishing and spreading Islamic values in a society which is ultimately against Islam. And of course we have a primary model, because at the time of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, there was no more a staunch opposition against the establishment and spreading of the Islamic values than at the Quraysh time. And through the Quraysh community, they tried vehemently and with every strength that they had to stop and oppose the spread of the Islamic values. And so for us to be able to find a model of thought, we should revert back towards the way in which Rasulullah established Islam. And if we understand his principles, if we understand the ways in which he taught his own community at the earliest of inceptions, in the first decade of Islam, you and I would have a model, a series of principles that we can apply to any given era of ours. And so this is my talk tomorrow, inshallah. I have a few minutes to introduce certain points to you, and my goal is to plant the seeds and make you think in a certain way and pose certain questions overnight, so that when you, inshallah, return tomorrow morning for doctor's session and then our second session, you will already start to think in line with how the Prophet himself molded and dispersed those basic principles. The first thing, there was a slide that Sister Miriam gave to us, and I don't have it unfortunately here now.
You do now.
Oh, wow.
Which one did you want?
It was towards the end, and I think you listed 4 reasons as to why the French community was scared of Islam. And it said, yes, that's the one, thank you. Would you mind putting that there for us? It's just so everyone can see it. Thank you. Who are afraid of Islam associate to Islam. rightly or wrongly. Now, I want to pose a question to you. Reply, help me out here, and then we will move forward with this discussion. Those list of fears, we can add to them, can't we? Many people find Islam to be irrational, it makes women submissive, it gives no rights to women, and so on and so forth. Based on those fears that the Western world or parts of the Western world are fueling, I pose this question to you. When Islam began at the time of the Prophet, did the Quraysh community share those fears or not?
Let grow the God's awareness.
Can I show you tomorrow practically how the Prophet did this?
Sure, but what I don't get is that how can we do this when we were told that Islam was the best religion?
They are not in contradiction with each other.
I feel
Best, that doesn't mean that another person isn't on the path of goodness. And so if I expect them to help me in my establishment of my religion, when they think the opposite, they think their religion or their sect is the best, correct? And that ours is here. In your statement, we think the opposite. Ours is here and theirs is there. But we expect that they help us in the establishment of our religion, so we can practice freely, so that we benefit through our religion. If we expect them to help us in the establishment and growth of our religion, we must also do the same for their religion. Because it is just, number one. Number two, because it provides us with the guarantee that more remembrance of God is being placed in society. And number three, there is a working partnership between us. Our goal is not to convert the whole world. It is not. Like Doctor said, let God convert people. Our role is to present goodness and help other people attain goodness, even if it's in their context. If a Sunni brother or sister is yielding goodness through his or her worship, help them. Don't be an impediment to that. If a Christian is being good through their worship, help them. Don't be an impediment to them. The same way, we wouldn't want them to be an impediment to us. I will show you tomorrow, inshallah, specifically how the Prophet ﷺ did this. Are there any other questions or more about this, inshallah? I will be brief because I know that we have dinner coming. Priorities. Right. Everybody has the verse? Okay, it's not 89. '62, wonderful. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 62. Thank you so much. Who said that? Who said 62? Thank you, sister. Okay, everybody turn to Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 62. Everybody with me? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna alladhina amanu. Surely those people who believe. Who are those people who believe? Who are those who believe? Muslims. Yes? Inna alladhina amanu. Walladhina hadu. And the Jews. Wal Nasara. And the Christians. Was-Sabi'ina. And the Sabians. Man amana billah. From amongst those whomsoever believe in God. وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, and the day of judgment, وَعَمِلَ الصَّالِحًا, and perform good deeds, فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ, their reward is with their Lord. for them. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And they shall not fear, nor shall they grieve. We have to discuss this verse more. I think it is a secondary discussion because there's a lot to it. But I want you to think about these things. I will conclude with a story. One day, our fourth Imam, Zainul Abidin, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, is sitting in his house. A companion of his comes to him and says, I've just come from Masjid Nabawi. What was happening there? Hassan al-Basri, a very famous mystic, Sufi scholar, is sitting giving dars, lesson inside Masjid Nabawi. What did he say? He said, Hassan Basri, he says, I wonder at the wrath of God. I wonder at God and how any of us will ever get to heaven. Meaning that we're all sinners, especially me, and so, based upon the accumulation of so many sins on my shoulders, I wonder how any of us will end up arriving at heaven. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam responds and says, go back to the masjid and tell Hassan al-Basri, Imam al-Sajjad says, I also wonder at God, but I wonder at His mercy and kindness. How will anyone get to hell? And so there is a lot for us to discuss, but in regards to your question, I leave it specifically to you to ponder upon as to whether, forget Mother Teresa as a person, what the individual represented, whether God, in His infinite kindness and mercy, would really reject her from His proximity. Something for us to think about, but that's a different discourse. Tomorrow, inshallah, we talk about how Rasulullah aided the establishment of Judaism and Christianity in Medina. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Some discussion up to about 12 based on the questions that you posed yesterday, maybe moving a little bit forward from jihad and hijab, but the questions that Chris has prepared. Okay. Thank you very much. Over to you.
The last conversation, it's very important in your discussion with people. Many people in Europe think that because the holy cities of Mecca and Medina are located in modern Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia must be the model of an Islamic state. This is in many people's minds. Now, without getting into politics and without getting into Wahhabi bashing, it's very important that we help people to understand that this is a state that is less than 100 years old, created in 1932. It is not a state of thousands of years of civilization like Egypt or like Iran
or India
or even Europe. So it's very important that we make people understand this is not the model. Don't look at Saudi Arabia and say that is Islam. That is very unjust. And that's in many people's mind. Okay. The questions, don't feel that you have to stare at my back. But you're very welcome to, but you may stare at my back and I shall trust you that you don't have a knife.
No, it's good. I prefer to see the nur from your face. Why
never leave space for them to get behind you with a knife. It's very important. Okay, the questions are grouped into 4 groups. So I want to spend 12 minutes on each, and then we'll see how much we can do, and we will move on. The first question: where is God in the face of injustice? One of the differences between God and us is that we are stuck in time. We are in this created world, fixed in time, fixed in this place. God is beyond time, beyond this place. Therefore, we cannot see the events of world history the same way that God sees them, because we see always from within time. Therefore, it can seem that we have periods of human history in which injustice is dominant in certain societies. We cannot see that from God's perspective, and also we cannot blame God for that. Secondly, there is a very important verse in the Quran that tells us, I, God, did not create human beings for sport. I did not create you for fun. You know those football table games, you know, when you get hold of it and you play with the men? That's not what God does. God does not keep saying, oh, I think I'll interfere and play a bit more with human life and society. God is not like that. God treats us with enormous respect. I have given you freedom. I have given you intellect, intelligence. I have given you guidance. I have given you the responsibility to put that into practice in the world. Et voilà. I give you this responsibility. You are my khilafah upon the earth. Now this is very important, because often people in European society think that God, Allah, is like the ancient Greek gods. If you remember, the ancient Greek gods used to play with human beings. I'm bored today, what shall I do? Oh look, there's a fishing fleet. I'll send them a great storm. Oh look, they're dying. Look, he's drowning. God is not like this. It's very important. We are God's agents upon the earth. We are God's khilafah. God has given us the tools, we must do the job. And so if there is injustice, we must be the ones who must counter it. If I am asked, what is the principal ethic of Islam? The principal ethic, I believe, is justice. Because with justice, all else will follow. Peace will follow. Human dignity will follow. So the principal ethic of the Sharia is justice. Therefore, the jurist is a very important person in our community. Okay, I'm going to leave that unless anybody wants to come back there, because